Hey everyone! Once again, I'd like to wish you all a very happy new year. 2020 was an interesting year for all of us, to say the least, and a very long one at that too. But now I'd like to focus on something that's been keeping me occupied for all of quarantine. And that, of course, is none other than manga. But today, specifically, I would like to focus on a recent series that I have completely fallen in love with as of late. And that is none other than Gege Akutami's recent smash hit, Jujutsu Kaisen. In my eyes, Jujutsu Kaisen had an outstanding 2020. Between the manga, which has been heating up and getting better and better every chapter, and the anime, which took off in around October and has also been a fantastic adaptation of this incredible manga. I would be stupid to not talk about this series. In this video, I'm going to talk about what I thought were my personal top 5 Jujutsu Kaisen chapters of 2020. This was such a hard list to put together. I mean, if you don't read Jujutsu Kaisen, you don't really know what I'm talking about. Just take a look at this. Take a look at this short list I have. Crazy, right? I'm just supposed to pick 5 of these chapters for this list. That's how good this manga is. I've also made some timestamps in the description for anyone who just wants to skip ahead to a certain rating. But before I even go into the list, I also want to go into some honorable mentions. This series is too good for me not to do that. And I'm also going to give out a major spoiler warning here. If you aren't caught up with the Jujutsu Kaisen manga, this might not be the best video for you, because that's pretty much all I'm going to talk about. The only reason that this chapter was not on the list was because it's connected to a very similar, slightly better chapter that's also on the list, in my opinion at least. But this chapter did feature some great characterization for Yuji, outstanding action, and an absolutely crazy ending. If I had to summarize this chapter in one word, it would be tense. This was the first time in maybe over 100 chapters we finally got to see Sukuna take over Yuji's body, and you could feel the impact this character has instantly. This is shown through Jogo, a character who fodderized literally 3 of our heroes a few chapters prior, and he was instantly terrified when Sukuna entered in Shibuya. Just wonderful writing all around. This chapter was an emotional roller coaster. It started with a bittersweet flashback of our favorite main trio, the heartbreaking realization that Yuji was at his emotional rock bottom, the crazy and admittedly kind of cool surprise that Mahito could use the Black Flash, and the even more insane bombshell that my boy, Aoi Todo himself, pulled up to Shibuya just to support his brother Yuji, in style too. What a great chapter. I love Toji Fushiguro. Up to this point, he was my favorite character in Jujutsu Kaisen, and he's literally my current Twitter profile picture. He's peak physical form personified, and we see that in this chapter. He disrespected everyone, from casually tossing Maki, one of the well-known, physically strongest characters in the series, to making quick work of Dagon, a special grade curse who our heroes couldn't even defeat. This chapter was a beautiful action chapter and a wonderful showing of one of my favorite characters. Alright, that's it for the honorable mentions. Before I finally begin the list, I'd like to say that of course, these are just my opinions in the way I rank them. And with that being said, here are my top 5 Jujutsu Kaisen chapters of 2020. Alright, let me break the ice first. This chapter is really depressing. It's depressing as hell, man. The previous chapter, 119, ended with Yuji looking as if he'd seen the end of the world. And when 120 starts, this guess isn't really too far off. The beginning scene has Yuji looking at just what used to be blocks and blocks of Shibuya, now completely destroyed by Sukuna. Oh, and he also sees the body of some dead bum too, but that's not important. This short scene is incredibly effective at reminding the audience that despite the actions that Sukuna committed, which could be considered beneficial to the heroes, he's still a villain. Knowing that how kind of a person Yuji Itadori is, he reacts at this scene just how anyone else would, with a face of despair. His realization that he needs to keep moving forward despite everything that's happening is chilling, and the look on his face completely sells it. And just when you think things couldn't feel any worse, Nanami appears for the first time in 10 chapters, and he is not looking good. I love his little speech here about what he wished he could have done in his life. It's really sad. Mahito coming out of nowhere to kill him is still shocking, and Nanami's last words to Yuji, man. It's alright, let me stop before I get too emotional. It's only the first chapter on the list. Overall, this chapter demonstrated very well just how well Gege Akutami can write, and its cliffhanger is would ultimately lead into the beginning of the arc's climax. I know this pick might be controversial to some, but in a sea of great action chapters, chapter 120 still manages to stand out, and I think that's worth something. I'm going to switch the tone up a little bit from incredibly depressing to incredibly exciting. Chapter 104 gave us some of the best action in the entire series, free. It begins with Mechamaru's pin finally reactivating, leading to him assisting Yuji in his fight against Choso. One thing I really love is that before the real fight begins, we get this awesome scene of Mechamaru just talking mad shit to Choso from even beyond the grave, and the expression of pure rage from the cursed spirit's face is so palpable. Choso takes the bait, and then we get into the bathroom scene. This scene is like a street fight and a martial arts movie rolled into one. From Yuji hiking his pants up to Choso getting in his stance, it's just awesome. These shots alone are already awesome, but then we get this beautiful double page spread with all the water flowing, the two fighters staring each other down, and then beginning to go at it. And the added narration and the previous pages are so cool. Itadori and Choso are still fighting, but the former is already breaking water pipes, leading into the narrator explaining the effect that this had on Choso's ability, which is incredibly interesting. And then the chapter literally ends with Yuji getting stabbed in the liver. The fact that that Gege went out of their way to tell us that it was his liver and not just, like, I don't know, his general stomach area makes the wound feel even more deep. Overall, this was clearly a fantastic chapter, one that gets even better on reread. Let me begin this part by reading off a gorgeous piece of narration from the third best chapter of 2020, chapter 119. Malevolent Shrine differs from other types of domain expansion in that it doesn't create a separate space using a barrier. The ability to realize one's innate domain without using a barrier is akin to an artist painting a masterpiece not on a canvas, but on air. A truly divine technique. This quote from the chapter is so beautiful. Shout out to Gege for writing it, and to the chapter's translation team for effectively conveying whatever Gege was trying to say. Now this spread is obviously fantastic, and honestly, this alone could have gotten it on the list. But wait, there's more. Sukuna's rampage in Shibuya continues when he just absolutely demolishes Mahoraga in another wonderful spread. I really like how the slash marks from Sukuna's techniques are sort of enhanced by the sound effects. And this isn't even the first time we're seeing this in this chapter, as earlier on, we see just like one whole page filled with a Sukuna attack represented by a really cool kanji symbol. It's pretty nice. This is also where we see the previously mentioned destruction in chapter 120. Now, if that was it, yet again, this chapter would have made the list. But Gege just decided to bless us by killing off the best character in the series, baby. Woo! Alright, I can't even remember his name, but he's out of here. He's gone. I never want to see him again. Don't want to ever see him revived or Edo Tensei or whatever. I don't care. He's gone. Overall, chapter 119 was a chaotic, destructive, and heavenly chapter. One that is certainly worthy of the number 3 spot on this list. Now, before the release of the number 1 chapter on this list, this was actually my favorite Jujutsu Kaisen chapter of the year for a long time. But before I get into it and start praising it to death, let me just say one thing I slightly dislike about this chapter. I'm not really the biggest fan of the ending. It's not bad in any way, and it certainly leads to something cool with Megumi summoning Mahoraga and all in that cool ass pose. But it definitely feels disconnected from the rest of the chapter. But oh well, let me start praising this chapter now. Chapter 116 features stellar art, incredible paneling, and best of all, surprisingly great dialogue between Jogo and the rest of the cursed spirits. I could take any page or panel from this chapter and frame it, from the beginning shot of Sukuna holding his flames, which came as a huge surprise in the previous chapter, to the double spread of Jogo and Sukuna kind of facing off, into the, I guess you would call it a double spread, but it's more just like 2 separate pages of Sukuna forming his flames, which is very Naruto-esque with all the hand signs and symbols and stuff. It's really cool. And these are just the first 5 pages of the chapter. The dialogue that Jogo and Sukuna have is great. I never imagined that we can get something like that from a villain who, once again, torched a few of our favorites. It's truly masterful stuff. And out of nowhere, Uraume, a character who we still really don't know really much about, reveals themselves to be an ally of Sukuna? So, not only did we get the conclusion to one of the best fights in the series, not only did we get a surprisingly touching send-off to a character I couldn't care less about before, not only did we get some of the coolest shots of the series, but Gege Akutami also planted the seeds for future events to come. Chapter 116 was incredible, and in my opinion, is only topped by one other chapter. From the very beginning of the series, it became clear that Jujutsu Kaisen was going to be a very fresh manga, one that would definitely come to surprise us all. But to me, it feels like almost everything since that beginning has been building up to the events in chapter 132. Now, I'm not going to try to summarize this whole chapter because every single moment, every single page, every single panel is incredible. But you know what really makes it for me? Alright, check it. So, there's this sequence of events that is just absolutely insane. Just when you think he's out of the fight, Todo, he comes out of nowhere and hits Mahito with a line that is so incredibly, and probably intentionally, reminiscent of Netero's last words to Meruem from Hunter x Hunter. It's such an amazing line, and I'm not going to try to I'm not going to say it here because I feel like I simply cannot do it justice. It hits even harder upon the reveal that my favorite character was completely bluffing, and he can't even use his technique. But Mahito completely fell for it, allowing Yuji to finally deliver a final Black Flash, ending the fight. Yuji's speech to Mahito is just awesome. It calls back to their recent conversation and does so much for Yuji's character. And the double-page spread that follows with our protagonist chasing down Mahito is so good, and it even grew enough on me to the point where I can easily say that it is my favorite spread of the entire series and one of the best spreads in the year for manga in general. The art, of course, is beautiful, and the imagery of a wolf hunting down its prey in the winter is not the most deep, but it is effective, and elevated this spread from already great to outstanding for me. Geto coming in at the end was a completely unbelievable twist, one that has already led to some crazy developments in the manga. Chapter 132 of Jujutsu Kaisen was simply phenomenal. It gave us some action that, while brief, was ridiculously tense and excellently choreographed. We also got some of the coolest shots and panels in the entire series. This shot of Todo was really cool. And most importantly, it gave us a satisfying conclusion to one of the best fights in the series, which had been built up for over 100 chapters, all while setting up events for the future. I can say with a clear conscience that, in my opinion, this was the best Jujutsu Kaisen chapter of 2020. I really hope Gege Akutami can give us more excellence like this in the future. What did you think about my list? If you hated it, let me know. If you liked it, you can still let me know. And if you think you would change things up a bit, feel free to leave a comment down below about what you think. I'm Brandino, and thank you all for watching. I'll see you all later.